I'll start my talk today on this understanding of PCO. What is PCOS? Let us first understand that. It is a very complex hormonal disturbance and that will affect the entire body with implications on general health and well-being. The symptom starts in the adolescent years and manifests during the adult years, and it can affect all age group of females from adolescence to menopause. In the reproductive age group, 5 to 10% having PCOS, but if you look at the infertile female women, it's 15 to 20%. And most of the time, it is not diagnosed till the female goes for infertility treatment. But now the adolescent health is getting a lot of attention, and so it's getting diagnosed earlier. Sometimes it is underdiagnosed, and many a times it is overdiagnosed also. So what is the exact cause? It's unknown, but mostly it's the excess of insulin, low-grade inflammation, hereditary, and excess of androgens that cause it. And when it has a genetic impact, also there is an environmental effect, and unknowingly, we create that perfect environment for PCOS, but you can reverse that by changing your environment. Weakened immune system, bad dietary choices, accumulation of toxins by eating junk food, obesity, insulin resistance, and genetic inheritance. It is characterized by infrequent menstrual cycle. Normally, a female would menstruate every 28 days. Here, the cycles can be delayed by 40 days, 60 days. Mostly, it will be more than 45 days to 2 months, 3 months. And many a times, they would not menstruate unless they are given a tablet for withdrawal bleeding. So they have a very hyperestrogenic status in the body, but there is no progesterone to counteract and get the withdrawal bleed. There is hyperandrogenemia, that is high testosterone level and androgen levels, and there is hyperinsulinemia. And a typical picture of polycystic ovary on the ultrasound. So when the female is an adolescent, up to 4 years, we would not diagnose it by just the ultrasound picture or the AMH. But yes, the female will start showing menstrual irregularities. First 1 year, many of the girls will have irregular cycles every 2 months, 3 months. That's fine, not to worry. But in 2 years, the pituitary, hypothalamic pituitary axis will get normal, and then they should have regular cycles. What is regular cycles? Anything between 25 days to 45 days. Anything more than 3 months is definitely not acceptable. So these are the females who may have PCO. They will have acne, lot of acne on the face. They'll break up, lot of hair growth. Then in the reproductive age group, there will be infertility. And if they conceive, chances of miscarriages and pregnancy complications are high. And when she has finished her obstetric career in the menopausal or perimenopausal period, she can have an endometrial hyperplasia, and that can also lead to endometrial cancer. So the main thing is the insulin resistance, hyperandrogenism, ovulatory dysfunction, and this will predispose them to all this. This is the typical picture. Lot of hair growth on the chin like a beard. The first female, in fact, had a beard, and that was when the PCOS word was stamped. Then lot of breakthroughs on the face, lot of acne. Then there is a baldness. They'll start losing hair. Even they have a male pattern body hair, that is on the breast, their chest, they have it, on the abdomen, they have it. And typically, they have a very black neck. Nape of the neck is dark. And even the armpits are very dark, which is called acanthosis nigricans. So these are some of the clinical features which can help you diagnose that this female could be having a PCO. Family history is a very strong, and then of PCO, like a sister has it, the sister would have it, mother would have it, maternal aunt would have it. Personal or family history of diabetes is there, obesity, and dyslipidemia, and even hyperglycemia. Mainly, it is the insulin resistance which is the culprit. Higher insulin level will trigger more production of androgen, that is male sex hormone, that will lead to all this. Excessive facial hair growth, weight gain, and acne. And a typical pear-shaped body with the accumulation of the weight and the fat on the abdomen area, the body shape begins to change into an apple-shaped. This insulin resistance is a genetic predisposition. What I said, there are certain genes now being diagnosed for the cause of polycystic ovaries, aging, pregnancy, certain type drug induced, lifestyle, sudden weight gain. And now we are targeting in PCO to treat this insulin resistance and treat the altered steroid metabolism. The metabolic syndrome is also wide because of the obesity, because of the PCO status itself, and the patient can have hypertension, microalbuminuria, and the dyslipidemia. So when you look at a PCO woman, she is definitely at the risk of infertility. There will be dysfunctional bleeding. She may not bleed for 3 months, but when she starts bleeding, it will last for 15 days, 20 days, and that's because her endometrium goes really thick, hyperplastic. And then this hyperplastic endometrium, which is having a lot of estrogen activity but no progesterone to counteract, can lead to a precancerous and an endometrial carcinoma condition. There will be obesity. She can have obstructive sleep apnea, type 2 diabetes. They are at risk of cardiovascular disease, and the family members, female family members of one family, can have the risk of PCOS running in the family. Testosterone levels are really high, especially the serum free testosterones are disproportionately higher. LH-FSH ratio is changed and it's more than 2 to make it diagnostic, and the AMH levels are also really very high. Now, what is the natural course? There is a congenital origin. The female at birth may be a low birth weight, but in childhood, the rapid catch-up of growth can lead to obesity and premature puberty. They have an early menstrual cycle also. And then they have anovulatory cycles. That means they do not ovulate naturally. Like a female would normally ovulate around 14 days and then get the menstrual cycle after 14, under 14 days. They will not have it that way. And most of their cycles, they will not release any egg only, and there will be hyperandrogenism. How will the teens react to this? The girls are confused, distressed, then they feel frustrated, sad, depressed, and because of their body, they feel poor self-esteem, they have a negative body image. Only when you counsel them a lot, they will understand that this is what they have and they have to live with it, but try to prevent it to grow further. What they normally chat, that is it possible for the PCO to go away? Are there any natural remedies? Will I be able to get pregnant? Why am I so hairy? No one knows what it's like to be me. These are the messages that we get. I wish my doctor understood how I feel. I skip meals, but still I don't lose weight. Why are there dark patches on my skin? Is it safe to be on a pill for a very, very long time? I have been trying to lose weight, but I cannot. And will this PCO ever go away? What are the treatments? First and foremost is a counseling and a support. Try to avoid weight gain in the adolescent girls, and many a times we have to put them on the OC pills with the estrogen and progesterone. Also, we add ethinyl estradiol with spironolactone or drospirenone, depending on what symptoms they have, like acne, they have weight gain, or they have hirsutism. Even there are nutrition plans that are available. Definitely exercise is very, very important, and hair removal technique like laser hair removals can also be done. So message to the young girls is that you have to adopt a healthy lifestyle. You are different from others, but you can still be like them. Have a balanced diet with proper food articles like cereal, pulses, green vegetables, jaggery, fruits, dairy products. Avoid junk food totally and start getting more active in the physical activity like cycling, skipping, jogging, swimming. It will stay with you forever. Now, generally, we have an impression that the PCOS patients are always obese. Yes, but there are PCO patients who are thin and lean. They are more difficult to diagnose and treat, and we require a proper workout. All PCO women are not necessarily overweight. These women who are lean but still has PCOS have elevated certain markers like CRP and ESR. They have to improve their habit. They should also not put on weight, but try to maintain the weight that they have. So exercise regularly and eat a very healthy diet to prevent any inflammation. Obesity and PCOS, almost 35 to 50% of women with PCOS are obese. 50% are overweight. And this obesity plays a very significant role in determining the severity and the metabolic disorder. Significant increase in infertility and menstrual irregularities if BMI is more than 30 kilogram. 30, I would say. So what are the lifestyle changes? There is no substitute to diet, exercise, weight loss, behavioral changes, and if you are a smoker, stop it. Studies have shown that a calorie restricted diet will help normalize the hormones, induce ovulation, and treat infertility. Also, there should be 5 to 6 small meals, and the metabolism should be kept humming so that there is reduced craving for sweets and starch. Monounsaturated fats like nuts help to fight the insulin resistance. Low GI carbs are very glycemic index of your food should be very low. And that is why it should be low, because it will reduce craving and it will slowly, steadily supply that energy in your body. So go for non-starchy vegetables, legumes, fruits that have low GI. Vitamins, load yourself with vitamin B, B2, because it helps in converting the carbohydrates into energy, normalize the blood sugar, weight loss, and B6 plays a critical role in maintaining women's hormonal balance. So all this should be utilized. Calcium, it plays a very important role in infertility for the oocyte, vitamin D absorption, and low levels of vitamin D have been associated with PCOS and related problems like infertility, weight gain, and insulin resistance. Consume foods that are rich in zinc and eat plenty of foods that contain magnesium. It helps in acne and obesity. Weight reduction includes a combination of caloric restriction, increased physical activity, and behavior modification. But always consult your doctor before taking any medication for PCOS, like birth control pills, which to take. We have to control menstrual cycle, which is there to reduce the male hormones, then diabetic medications, infertility treatment, what is the best, IUI, IVF, or even a laparoscopic ovarian drilling. Metformin is the best insulin sensitizer, and it helps in lowering the blood glucose. It lowers the androgen and insulin level, and that will help in weight loss. It is an off-label use in PCOS, but definitely it helps in all this. And overweight women and normal weight can at least achieve ovulation. Inositol is another safe and relatively inexpensive. Now there are reasonable evidences. It is of benefit in PCOS, but not in non-PCOS. Typically recommended dose is 2 grams. And myoinositol versus metformin. I would say metformin is the drug of choice. I would prefer 500 3 times a day or based on the weight. But if a person cannot tolerate metformin and have a lot of gastric disturbance, then I would switch to myoinositol. And giving both to a female also is not a bad idea if it's a severe PCOS and proven insulin resistance. Myoinositol will increase insulin sensitivity, improve glucose utilization, reduce the testosterone level, help in providing good oocytes, restore menstruation, and improve pregnancy rates. The natural source of myoinositol is grapefruit, leafy vegetables, beans, almonds, walnuts have the highest myoinositol. And infertility and PCOS, yes. The females, as soon as they get a partner or get married and plan a baby, they may not be worried about their menstrual cycle. They will think that they can get pregnant easily. But if they have irregular cycle, they just say that I don't have a problem, but I want to regularize my cycle so that I can have a baby. And we diagnose them with PCOS. They feel that there is something really abnormal. I would say it's not abnormal. Nowadays, the cases of PCOS are increasing in all the countries. And the reason is the lifestyle, junk food, lack of exercise. Most of the children and females are sitting on they do not go for outdoor games, but they are on the virtual social media, etc. So all this is leading to a very increase, and there is a little genetic element, and that will be flared up with this environmental changes that have been coming up in the new lifestyle. Most of these women will have oligomenorrhea, that is delayed cycles, or totally they will not get menstruation till they have taken some tablets. Now, ovulation, it's not very good. Even the quality of the egg genotypically will be weak. Fertilization, implantation, also there will be endometrial abnormality. If they get pregnant because of their high LH and androgen levels, the chances of miscarriages are very high. If they proceed to 3 months and 4 months and 5 months, their uterus may be small, the uterus can have septum, and their cervix will have incompetence to a certain extent compared to a non-PCO women, so they can have a premature delivery also. Along with pregnancy also, there are problems like gestational diabetes, hypertension, which they should take care of. The basic treatment for an ovulation induction for PCOS patient, considering that the husband male partner is absolutely normal, we would like to give them oral ovulogens in the form of letrozole 5 mg or Clomid 100 mg. Letrozole is the first drug of choice according to WHO now, and always their cycle should be monitored to check whether they are really ovulating or the egg is growing or not. Many a times you find the PCOS patients will not respond to oral ovulogens. You may have to add gonadotrophins, or you may have to start a cycle with gonadotrophins, or you may have to prime them 3 months prior with metformin. Sometimes you also have to add low dose dexamethasone, especially when the DHEA is high or the testosterone level is high. Or you do a laparoscopic ovarian drilling and then give these drugs. Finally, IUI, IVF, and bariatric surgery. The other adjuvants are melatonin, N-acetylcysteine. Then there is L-methylfolate, which we give to all the patients, and their homocysteine levels are supposed to be high. It will come down with it. Surgical treatment, laparoscopic ovarian drilling. I would say that when the male partner is fine, the female is pretty young, and she doesn't want to jump onto IVF, this is one method which we can always try, wherein we drill the ovary. What happens that they have a very thick cortex in the ovary. There are a lot of eggs in the periphery, and there is a lot of thick medulla. So what happens, this medulla is so thick, it is releasing lot of LH, lot of androgens. And it is not giving enough space for the egg to grow and rupture. So by drilling the ovary at the right spot, you don't have to drill on the follicle, but on the medulla, on the cortex, mainly the medulla, which is very thick. The release of the androgens, the release of LH will come down. And there are bright chances for another 16 to 18 months that this female will respond to the oral ovulogens or gonadotrophins and can have a natural release of egg, and she can conceive naturally. But remember, only ovarian drilling will not help. After that, you have to take the ovulation inducing drugs and follow the ultrasound cycle to see and monitor. This is a very small laparoscopic surgery, a daycare surgery. And when the patient is lean PCOS, when the testosterone levels are very high, when the LH level, LH to FSH ratio is very high, it is best to go for ovarian drilling. This lean PCO with ovarian drilling do wonders and can conceive naturally. If they are not responding to routine letrozole and clomiphene and not ovulating, then also give a trial with laparoscopic ovarian drilling. This is the typical surgery, how they do it. And you get admitted in the morning, the surgery is performed, and by evening you are discharged and rest for 1 day, and you can start your routine work. Then there is the intrauterine insemination and in vitro fertilization. Most of the patients of PCOS who have high AMH, high LH, high testosterone may not do well with IUI. Why? Because when you start to stimulate them with oral ovulogens, they may not produce an egg. But when you give them gonadotrophins for IUI, they'll produce a lot of eggs. And when we want to do an IUI, maximum we want 2 to 3 eggs only to develop. If there are 8, 10 eggs developing at the same time, we cannot do IUI, just because if we give the trigger, this patient can go into ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, and that is very notorious. So it is best that if you are not responding to oral ovulogens or oral ovulogens plus gonadotrophins, and if you are responding and showing a lot of eggs, convert that to IVF cycle, or start a fresh IVF cycle. Because in IVF, even we give you a lot of injections, you are showing some 15, 30 eggs, we are going to remove them. We are going to fertilize and freeze. So after that, we can bring down your estrogen level and you run no risk of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. When there is a male factor or there is a tubal blockage, definitely in vitro fertilization should be done. Or the female is not able to reduce the weight. Anti-estrogen therapy or LOD in long-standing infertility has not worked, or she is of an age group where she is nearing that 30 to 35 years where the abnormal eggs increase, then it is better to go for IVF. Now, the problem in ovulation induction in PCOS is that we want to reduce first their insulin concentration. We want to use only FSH. We also want to reduce LH. Sometimes you check LH on day 2, it's 19, 20. These females will not respond to normal ovulogens or even to gonadotrophins. You have to cut that and bring them down. These 3 factors we have to work on. Problem of ovulation induction in PCOS, as I said, you give them tablets, you give them injection, they do not produce any eggs. Even after 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, 25 days, you call them, you are seeing that same 8 to 10 mm, 12 mm, multiple small follicles. How will this patient ovulate? Or there is hyper response. There are 5 follicles on both the sides, even with a 75 IU of gonadotrophin or Clomid, which are about 14-15 millimeter. So then we cannot go ahead, or we have to convert it into IVF. And very high levels of LH can also give rise to low conception and miscarriage. This is the typical IVF lab. Pre-IVF consideration, weight loss. I would say even without pre-IVF, any female who reduces the weight by 10%, they say 5 to 10, but I would say 10%. If she is 100 kilos, she sheds off 10, comes to 90 kilograms. Her chances of ovulating naturally or getting a result in infertility treatment is very high compared to a female who fails to lose weight. I understand it's not easy for them, but if they work hard for this, definitely they can achieve this. And I have seen such achievers. Metformin can be added. Laparoscopic ovarian drilling before IVF is also considered if there is persistently high LH. And all these measures will help in preventing the incidence of OHSS and increasing the outcome of IVF. Now, metformin in the dosage of 500 3 times, sometimes 1000 milligrams 2 times in the morning, evening. When we do the IUI, we start from a very low dosage of gonadotrophins to high. What is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome? Supposing we give the trigger and she has a lot of eggs, her estrogen levels will go high. And with this, the ovary is hyperstimulated. That means a lot of follicles on both the sides. So she will start developing ascites. The fluid from the intracellular will come out into the extracellular space. Then it will go into the lungs for pleural effusion. Then it can go into the pericardial infusion, which becomes a very serious condition for the female. And sometimes they'll end up in the ICU. Now with the recent protocols, we rarely see such, and we don't see at all this hyperstimulation. But in a PCOS patient, we have to be worried about this. And that's the reason an IVF is very helpful rather than an IUI in PCOS patient. We prefer an antagonist protocol. Antagonist means you start your gonadotrophin from day 2, and then on day 5, 6, depending on the follicle size, we add the antagonist and carefully titrate the dose of gonadotrophin. And once we give the trigger, we don't give HCG trigger because HCG trigger is the culprit for ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Instead, we give GnRH agonist trigger. And once the eggs are removed, we again give medications like cabergoline, like letrozole, like antagonist to bring the estradiol level very low very soon. And she doesn't have a problem. I will discuss one case of mine of PCOS. This was about, I would say, 20 years back. I had, that time there was no antagonist protocol. There was just the agonist protocol. This female was a typical PCO with lots of eggs, and we started with the agonist protocol. In the first cycle, we started a very low gonadotrophin and she did not get any eggs. So second cycle, we became bolder and we started with a higher dose of gonadotropin. We retrieved her eggs. There were a lot of eggs. That time freezing protocol was also not so good, 22 years back when I started my IVF, 22. And so we got 3 embryos on day 3. We transferred 2. And at that time, for the luteal phase support, we were giving HCG injection. The trigger was always HCG. And she conceived. She conceived with twins. And she went into hyperstimulation. She had ascites, everything possible. We tapped the ascites number of times. We gave her, ultimately we decided that we'll do her termination of pregnancy. But she didn't agree. She said, I would rather die, but I'll have both my children. Finally, by the time she was 10 weeks, everything was settled and she was continuing with pregnancy very well. At 28 weeks, she came with severe pain in abdomen, which we thought was a preterm labor pain, but it turned out to be a twisted ovarian cyst. Her ovaries were so big, they got twisted and one ovary got necrotic. So we performed a surgery, laparotomy, removed that ovary, kept her admitted. And at 33, 34 weeks, she delivered twins, one boy, one girl, which are very healthy now, almost 20 years. So that was the scenario two decades back. But now nothing of this happens because we have the antagonist protocol, give the agonist trigger, freeze all the embryos, and then transfer very coolly in the next cycle, second cycle, third cycle, 1 or 2 blastocysts. And eventually, the success rate of PCO is like other patients. They don't say that the PCOS has a lower success rate. It's not so. So this is the fresh versus frozen. We now do all frozen cycle for PCOS patient. This is another technology, in vitro maturation, which is very famous in the Far East, especially in China and in Korea, South Korea, where they give a very little dosage of gonadotropin and the eggs are extracted when they are immature. And then we grow the eggs outside and then fertilize them, a very patient-friendly approach. But the results are not as good as fully mature egg retrieval. During pregnancy also, she has a risk of gestational diabetes, pregnancy-induced hypertension, premature delivery, preeclampsia, cesarean sections, and increased perinatal mortality. Risk of PCOS for female offspring is higher developing PCOS. Any female PCOS will have a daughter who will have a higher PCOS. They will also have increased LH, testosterone, and insulinemia because of the genetic component. Now we look at the PCOS patients who have finished their obstetric career or did not have a child. They feel that everything is over. No, they are still at an increased risk for developing endometrial cancer. All PCO patients feel really relaxed, put on weight, and then their cycles are like once in 6 months, 1 in 8 months, and they're not worried. They feel that it's okay, we are not menstruating. No. This endometrial thickness, which is increasing, is the site for your carcinoma or cancer. Please, even after you have finished your obstetric career, try to maintain your weight, try to have the diet which does not induce hypertension or diabetes, and your menstrual cycle should be regular. If you are not getting regular menstrual cycle, take progesterone every month and induce your bleeding. It has to shed out. Chronic estrogen stimulation is really, really bad, and it is the cause for endometrial cancer. So you have to balance your high estrogen and testosterone level, because this buildup of uterine lining will create an environment for cancer cells to grow. So even after you have finished your obstetric career, yearly testing, complete thorough examination, blood pressure assessment, diabetes checkup, lipid profile, homocysteine level, and cardiac risk factors should be definitely screened every month. A multidisciplinary approach. People are aware about PCOS, but they are not aware about it, that what really it is. So there should be good blogs, good social media posting, website information, and I would say targeted, dedicated PCO clinics, which I would suggest we should have at Zivanza. And this PCO clinic will need a clinician, will need a psychological counselor, will definitely need a dietitian, and an exercise or a health expert in exercising. If all these come together, these PCO patients can attend at one day, get knowledge of what is new, how they can control their PCOS. If there is an infertile patient, they can interact that how they can go ahead with their IVF cycles, or adolescent girls can have a support that it's not only me, there are so many like others. And then by looking at each other, by interacting with each other, this support group can help the PCO patient in the adolescent age itself to control their weight, lead a healthy lifestyle. And by the time they get into their reproductive age group, they are healthier and fitter. So dedicated PCOS clinic is the need of the hour, and it will really help a lot of young girls, lot of females of the reproductive age group, and lot of perimenopausal women also know the correct status of PCOS, the current treatment modalities, and how they can support each other. PCOS is an entity with a long lifespan. It is never 100% cured, but yes, you can prevent it from happening by controlling your weight and lifestyle changes. Therapist changes with each stage of life, from adolescent to adult to perimenopausal. Treatment have so far been directed only towards the symptom, but that is what I'm saying, that you have to target the syndrome, and for this you will need all these four people together to interact with this group. Oral contraceptive pills, anti-androgens, fertility improving agents, all have been shown to be effective in addressing the specific problem in PCOS. Lifestyle modification, no substitute. Weight loss, hard exercise, hard work is needed prior to infertility treatment to improve the ovulation rate. Extensive effort should be made to fully investigate in order to make therapy more successful and to delay the serious long-term effects of the disease on patients' health. That serious long-term effects we should always remember. So don't mind the mood swing, carb avoidance, forgetfulness, my obsession with OPKs, my excitement over hair removal products, or the pharmacy in my purse, because I'm a sister. And this PCO group, if they've come together, I think that lots of PCO patients would definitely benefit and get the advantage of the support group that they have.